Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back. Today, I am going to tell you a story about a famous man who truly made a difference. Yeah, made a difference. And he was just one man. And who knows, without what this one man did, who knows if our United States would actually be here. I am going to read you the story by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. Now, this is a famous poem, but even poems can be made into stories, and this is one such example. It's illustrated by Ted Rand, and it tells the story of Paul Revere and how one night, going out riding and warning of the British invasion during the Revolutionary War, made a huge impact. Now listen, my children, you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or by sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the old North Church tower as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to be armed. Then he said good night, and with a muffled oar silently rowed to the Charleston shore. Just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at the mooring bay, the Somerset, British man of war, a phantom ship, with each mast and spar, across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend through alley and street wandered and watches with eager ear, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed to the tower of the old North Church by wooden stairs and stealthily tread to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade, by the trembling ladder steep and tall to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down a moment on the roofs of the town and the moonlit flowing over all. Beneath in the churchyard lay the dead, in their night encampments on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still they could hear, like a sentinel's tread, the watchful night wind as it went creeping along from tent to tent and seeming to whisper, all is well, all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead. For suddenly all of his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black and bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with a heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed at the landscape far and near. This impetuous stamped the earth, and turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still. And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer, and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, and bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry of hoofs in the village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing a spark, struck out by steed flying, fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and the spark struck, and that by that steed in his flight kindled the land into flame with its heat. He has left the village and mounted the steed, and beneath him, tranquil and broad and deep, is the mystic, meeting the ocean tide, and under the alders that skirt its edge, now soft in the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of his steed as he rides. It was now 12 by the village clock. When he crossed the bridge in Medford town, he heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and he felt the damp of the river fog that rises after the sun goes down. It was now 1 by the village clock. When he galloped into Lexington, he saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and in the meeting house windows, black and bare, gaze at him with a spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work that would be looked upon. It was 2 by the village clock. When he came to the bridge in Concord town, he heard the beating of the flock, and he twitter of the birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown. And one was safe and asleep in his bed, and at the bridge would first be the first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall. Chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees and turns of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, the cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For born on the night wind of the past, through all of our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will awaken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. Well, boys and girls, that's a story, but also very much of a history lesson. It tells how one man went out on a ride to warn everyone that the British were coming. And if he had not done that, they would have slept while the British invaded. have you ever thought about how just you can make a difference? Well, we are in some weird times right now, aren't we? Where we're staying in when we're not around all of our friends. So it seems sometimes we're isolated, we're alone. But are there ways for you to still make a difference? I think that's a good conversation for you and your parents. Because I believe in you and I know you can make a difference. I've seen it. So, have a wonderful day and go out there and make a difference.